Protesters gathered in Dunedin today over a new $50 million animal lab being built by Otago University. They claim the university killed over 11,000 animals last year alone, and that the research is not only cruel, it doesn't really work.
But don't we have that right to do this, given that we're trying to embrace and strengthen the human race?
Right, so I don't think that argument even comes into play here. I think what it all comes down to is we want to find cures for humans. Animal-based research is not the most relevant or applicable research method when it comes to finding cures for humans. It's in New Zealand law now that animals are sentient. It's about time we started treating them that way.
Kia ora, I'm Tara Jackson and I'm the Executive Director of the New Zealand Anti-Vivisection Society. When you're talking about my journey into activism, it did stem from me as a little girl loving animals and seeing that the world doesn't treat them the way that I think they should be treated. But that then went on to school and high school, where I'd pretty much take any opportunity I could to fight against what I thought was an injustice for animals.
Kira. Good girl.
I am part Māori, and I think that has played a huge part into my view on life and why I am the way I am, really, in terms of an activist. And, my ancestors were people like tangata whenua, people who have a deep connection with nature, and I like to think I have that too. Going to university, I studied zoology. And my whole motive behind that was I just wanted to learn more about animals, to understand them, to be able to help them. And then while I was at university, it really hit home the differences between animals on a scientific level, and learning how the smallest difference between us and a rat actually accounts for a lot. And I guess that kind of sparked my journey into anti-animal testing and realising the massive injustice we inflict upon animals used in science. So animal testing is basically the use of animals for claimed scientific purposes, where they're forced to undergo procedures that are normally quite detrimental to them. So it involves things like force feeding animals, putting substances in their eye or on their skin, depriving them of food or oxygen. This still happens in New Zealand. So annually, we use around 300,000 animals for science in New Zealand. So here in our beautiful country, we're still force-feeding animals, we're still cutting into them while they're alive, we still even drill holes into the skulls of rats. We still do a lot of animal experimentation in New Zealand that would shock the general public. I've also adopted multiple rats before, and the first rats I ever adopted, Hera and Zula, really changed the way that I view rats, and they really inspired me. When I'm needing energy or needing some motivation, I actually think of them, and I have a paw print of Hera, because she's sadly passed away now, but I have her paw print on my desk, and I always look at that before I'm about to do something big and get that fire back in my gut, because animals like her are suffering and they are just worth so much more. I'm passionate about ending animal testing for two really big reasons. One is that I love animals and I think it's morally wrong to exploit them. The second is actually scientific reasons, and that stems from my studies at university, where I did zoology and learned a lot about comparative physiology and how those small differences account for a lot. The truth behind animal testing is that using animals to try and model how we as humans will respond, it just doesn't work. The animal testing industry is a very old, archaic industry that hasn't changed in many, many years, and it really needs to. We've still got very outdated mindsets of people who don't want to change. There's a lot of money involved. There's old, outdated laws and regulations that are keeping this industry alive as well. Not to mention it's all really well hidden, which is why a lot of Kiwis don't even know that it happens here, because it all happens behind closed doors. And there's a great example of that in Dunedin. The animal lab is actually quite central in town, but the floor where all the animals are kept, all the windows are blackened out like they've painted over the windows, and that's just so symbolic of the entire industry. It's a huge problem because if people knew what these animals were going through, people wouldn't tolerate it, people wouldn't allow it. One of my favourite stories and favourite victories that we've had at NZAVS for animals used in science is actually something that's really personal to me, and that's when I was at university studying zoology, I had to do a paper that involved using animals in research for some particular way, and I decided I wanted to do mine in the most positive way possible, so I decided to do it on enriching the environment of these animals. So it was my way of trying to introduce an exercising wheel and fun tunnels and better bedding. And then at the end of the paper, all of these mice were going to be killed. They were all just going to be gassed and killed and thrown out. And that was devastating news for me. So I tried really hard to get the university to let me rehome them, and I got a massive, massive no. It turned into a massive ordeal where I really upset a lot of the people that worked at the university. They personally felt attacked by me wanting to rehome the animals. And I was told that if any of the animals were missing, that they would know it was me and that there would be, academic backlash. And I mean, it was fair of them to say that because I was planning on stealing them. I had a swipe card to get in. I was planning on taking these animals. But long story short, I wasn't able to save them. And it was such a painful experience, and getting to know these animals and then having to just let people come in and gas them and chuck them out like they were just disposable lab tools was heartbreaking. So I held on to that, and then it was about 5 years later where I'm now the executive director of NZAVS, and we had the opportunity to work with that exact same university to rehome animals, and that was after a massive campaign that we ran. And the really cool thing is that we were rehoming mice that were used in the exact same paper that I had done many years before. So that was a victory all on its own. They were no longer killing these mice, they were coming out, they were getting rehomed and living wonderful lives. I adopted 6 of them myself and loved them for as long as they lived. So it was kind of like this full circle moment for me, where as a student, I tried to push for change and I didn't have any power, and I was shunted and told I couldn't do anything. Went away, came back. Now years later, I have the backing of thousands of supporters around Aotearoa that makes my voice representing the animals a lot stronger. I could come back and actually make a change for these animals. So it was such a proud moment for me, in that I think there's a real message there for people that if you see something that isn't right, you should try to stop what's happening, and even if you have no luck, keep trying, because you could actually go on to help save lives. So there are a lot of things that people can do in their own lives to help end animal testing in New Zealand. You can make sure that all of the products you're using are cruelty-free. So even if you don't wear makeup, making sure that your dishwashing liquid, your toilet cleaner at home, making sure that they are all made by brands who are genuinely cruelty-free. And NZAVS actually has a cruelty-free guide that you can use to find out what brands are 100% free from being affiliated with animal testing. So there's that side of things where you can change the products that you're buying, and you can educate your friends and whānau about the products that they're buying as well. And then another one is learning more. And I think this is massively important, is actually learning more about what happens to these animals in Aotearoa, why they're used, how many are used, and actually more around the lack of scientific value that using animal models has. And we have all of that information on our website at nzavs.org.nz. And I really do believe that that's one of the most powerful ways people can make change, is by educating themselves and learning more. Because once you learn more and you spark that fire in you of passion, you go out to the rest of the world and you teach them as well. The reason why I say that's powerful is because one of the biggest barriers that we have in trying to end animal testing is the misconception that animal experimentation is a necessary evil. And once we rip away that social license, it's just going to be like a flood of positive change for animals.